Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel, the Gym Shed Guy. I'm back in the shed again. The last video I made, I was talking about I was going to go on a bike ride, so just showing you what equipment I was wearing. I had this hat on, long sleeve base layer, talks about the arm warmers and the foot overshoes. Just as I was about to set off, it started to rain, so I got my green jacket out of my pocket and a warmer green jacket. I went on a 15-mile ride out, and then I turned around to the 15-mile mark and then rode the 50-mile back. It was wet, the roads are wet, there's stones, mud on the floor. When I got to the 15-mile marker, it was just a coincidence that there's this other bloke, he was coming the opposite direction, so I turned around and I managed to catch up with him. I told him, I'm not chasing after you, I'm not following you, I'm not a weirdo. It's just that wasn't a 15-mile mark. We got chatting and he asked me where I was going, and I live in the same place as what he was coming to. He's been to see his mate he was going. So he'd already been 60 odd miles and we had about 15 miles to go. So I could have sped off, but I wasn't going to go very fast anyway because it's wet and windy, so I thought I might as well just go a bit slower and just chat to someone else. He thanked me after actually for dragging him along because he'd already been 60 miles, he's cold and wet. He did want to stop for a can of Coke at a little shop, but the shop was shut, so the motivation was just to have a chat, and he said it's alright. I went on another bike ride the other night, I think it was Sunday night, and 7 miles into the ride, it's dark again because I got new lights, and I thought, it sounds a bit different, the front tyre, and then it felt a bit bouncy, so I carried on riding a bit longer. I thought, no, that doesn't sound right, so I stopped, squeezed the front tyre, and it was half flat, so I'd had a puncture. So I got off the bike, had to walk down the road a little bit to find a nice little area where I could set up a garage and fix my puncture. So just want to talk about a few little things I've noticed, because I've never actually had a puncture out on the road before, and definitely not in the dark. So having to fix a puncture on the side of the road is possibly a challenge for me, especially then in the dark. What was I going to do? So I did it. It's fine. It took a bit longer than what I would have done in my house or in the daylight, but I did it. It's fine. Everything went really well, but I noticed a few little things. So first of all, if I spin it round, so first of all I noticed, well, first of all I got here my Lezyne, it's 1100 lumen light. So I've used this now on a few rides. The first ride I went on, I did 30 miles, and the top button, if it's green when the battery's fully charged. When it goes to 50% charged, it drops to a yellow colour. When it goes to 25% charged, it goes to red, and then when it's 5 or 10% charged, it flashes red, just to let you know it's going to run out. So when I did the 30-mile bike ride, I wanted to go for at least 2 hours. So in the 1100 lumen mode, it says on the back of the packet that 1100, it only lasts for an hour and 20. So that wasn't long enough, because I was going to go for at least, well, further than 40 minutes out and 40 minutes back. So if you turn down to the 650 lumen setting, it says 2 hours and 30. So then that should be 75 minutes until the 50% light flashes. But I noticed that the 15-mile mark was actually 45 minutes. So it doesn't last as long as it says it does. I'm not sure whether that's because of the cold, or maybe it wasn't 100% fully charged. But I've been out again on another bike ride, and instead of flashing at the 15-mile mark at 45 minutes, it reduced to the green light at only 10 miles. So I know it was even colder that night. So just saying that the mode doesn't give as much battery as what you think it does. Luckily it's got different settings, so I dropped it down to the 450 enduro mode. But when I was on the bike ride to the puncture, I thought if I keep it in a high mode, it's going to run out. So what I did is I dropped it down to the really dim mode, the Femto 15 lumen mode. It says it lasts 78 hours. So then I used that torch, I pointed it downwards to my wheel, I managed to use that for a bit of light. And I also took off the little light, the little Femto light, and I put that in my mouth so I could see what I was doing. And I turned the red light off the back just to make sure that that wasn't going to drain. So one thing I've learned is what I need to do is put a head torch in the saddlebag, leave it there forever. So if you ever do break down in the dark and need to fix something, use the head torch to see what you're doing, because it's hands free as well. And then it's not going to waste your main light to get back. Because if I was more than 7 miles away, say I was 15 miles out, well then I'd only have about an hour's worth of battery left to come back. But if you're going to spend half an hour to an hour fixing the bike, well then the light's going to be dead. And then if you're still in the dark, how are you going to get back? So that's just a little note. Moving on from the headlight part then, this saddlebag, it's a brand new saddlebag I bought, giant. It says on it, where does it say it? At the back I think, it says on it, does say that somewhere, waterproof. Now they must mean just the material's waterproof, because I haven't been in it since I haven't needed to use the bag since I put it on the bike. So inside the bag has my combi tool, it has 3 tyre levers, a puncture repair kit and some tissues. To stop it making a noise, I put the tyre levers and the tissues and the kit, wrapped them up with in a plastic bag and put them in that bag. So double bagged in a waterproof bag. When I opened it, there's moisture inside the black bag, and then the tissues are slightly damp as well. So from the last couple of rides in the puddles, water has got in. So it hasn't got any rips, it hasn't got any through the seams. I'm guessing what it's done is it's probably landed here, and then just with gravity and wind, and it's somehow snuck up in here. Because if I open up, it's not a tight fitting, so that's just loose like that. That's loose, that's just Velcro, that's a hole there. So when it says 100% waterproof, it doesn't mean you go swimming in it. Like an Ortlieb dry bag, that rolls up. That's just open as. All it does is Velcro's shut like that, still leaving that hole in the side. Then you roll it down a little bit, but now that hole is now facing upwards, and then you just loosely bungee it back like that, which isn't very tight at all. So water's going to land in that part there, and then as you go over the bumps, up and down hills, going 30 miles an hour, it must work its way inside, and moisture gets inside and your stuff inside is wet. Luckily I had my stuff in a plastic bag, so it wasn't completely wet, but if you'd have had a hat in there, socks in there, gloves in there, scarf or something, then, or your phone, then it's not 100% waterproof. And the material's waterproof, but it will get inside. So basically then it's useless. So that's crap. I'm thinking about maybe sending it back. I haven't got the packaging. I can print off a receipt, but it's not what it says it's supposed to be. It's not 100% waterproof, so it's crap. The rear light, that's still really good. I've noticed there's different settings on there, but I noticed it does need charging more often than what I thought it would. In the bright daylight mode, it shines for 4.5 hours or 4:45 hours. There is a setting where it does about 18 hours, where it's just on constant, but I won't have it flashing quite bright. So I got the tyre off. I managed to hook the bike. I hooked the handlebars over a metal fence, just so I didn't have to put the fork in the mud. I unscrewed the bolt. I put the bolt back through the forks just to make sure I didn't lose it in the dark. So I had the wheel off. I managed to get the tyre off and the inner tube out quite easy because it was flat anyway. I run my finger through the inside of the tyre and I found a little tiny thorn sticking out, and then I looked on the other side of it and it was just, you could see the thorn on the inside and outside. Another top tip, as well as the head torch, is to put a pair of pliers or little tweezers in the saddlebag with your kit, because to pull the thorn out, especially with cold hands, is quite hard. So you want to get the thorn out to make sure it, yeah, you want to make sure you pull the thorn out to make sure it doesn't go back in the tyre again. So a pair of tweezers or pliers. I think as well, put a pen in the bag as well. So when you do eventually find the hole in the tyre, you can then draw a circle around it, and then in the dark you're not going to lose it over and over again. So I pump the tyre up, I pump the inner tube up, put a bit of spit on it, and I can see the bubbles popping out. But when the inner tube goes down a bit, there's less air, it doesn't stop bubbling. So if you just draw a pen around it, then you won't lose the hole. What was really good, I'm really impressed with, is the patches. Instead of using glue, all you need to do is get a bit of sandpaper, rough up the area, and then the patch is stuck on it. It's just self-sealant, so just stuck straight on it. I tested it by pumping up the inner tube, made sure that it wasn't more than one hole, and it went okay, so I put it back on. A little tricky getting the tyre onto the rim. The last little bit was quite hard to get on, but it went on quite easy, seated properly. Started pumping up the tyre. This little mini pump is really cheap, a little carbon lightweight one. It's actually pretty good. It didn't pump up really hard, probably as hard as, definitely not as hard as I can get it with my track pump back in the shed, but for the side of the road it did a good job. I was surprised because I didn't test it before I went out, so now it does actually work, and it's quite a good little pump. So happy with that one. And then when I finished fixing it and pumped it up, I turned back around, came home, but I was cold, I was wet, I was a bit, morale's gone down a bit, so I couldn't get warmed up again, so I just slowly rode back. My average speed is a bit crap. I was wasn't sure if the tyres pumped up hard enough, if I was going to get any more punctures coming back, but it was good. When I came back, I double checked the next day, the tyre was okay. I've noticed that the headset was a little bit loose, so I've had to undo these two bolts, tighten up the top bolt, and then tighten up the bolts again. So that's okay. I charged up the front lights, charged up the back light. I've double checked the tyre, that's quite hard. But yeah, so I'm going to possibly send the back, get another different waterproof bag. I'm going to get a small little like 1 litre canoe bag to go inside that bag. Put a head torch in there, put a pen in there, and possibly spare batteries for your head torch, and that's about it really. Okay, yeah, so hope I haven't waffled on too much. That's a bit about my night ride. Had to fix a puncture in the dark, what sort of kit I'd recommend, how my lights are working, and stay tuned for the next video. Okay, see you soon.